I try not to come in and meddle, especially with something that the team has done a great job with. And frankly, they're doing a lot better than I would be doing if I had it on my own. So that's like the devil on both shoulders, because the other side is, as an operator, anyone that's in operations or loves operations, like your natural instinct is jump in. So it's like, how do you hold yourself back? But if we jump in, one, we're probably not going to do it as good as them, but two, they're not going to learn in there. That's one thing we're trying to do.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Today's guest is a friend and a person I have learned so much from throughout all of the years we've known each other. He has over 20 years of experience in the landscape, snow, and ice management industry. He cares deeply about his team and truly invests in the success of his people. He's a business owner, recruiting expert, and lifelong learner. He is also a family-oriented individual, entrepreneur, and outdoor enthusiast. Looking forward to digging further into the key components that have driven his consistent personal and business growth. Founder and chief visionary of JC Grounds Management, Jon Crandall, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me, and thanks for reading that introduction. Exactly the way I wrote it. Just kidding.
I tried to do you justice, man. Did my best. So yeah, thanks for carving out the time and spending it here with us. I'm psyched to get into this with you.
Same here. I'm excited to be here. Thanks again.
Awesome. So I'm going to change the show up just slightly today, and the reason for that is Jon he just wrote a book, right? That's a big deal. Like, how many people do we know who have written books? I know a handful, right? And Jon, now you're one of them. So I really want to talk about that, and then we'll get into the chapters, the content, everything else. The book is Snow Removal Solutions for Property Managers, right? That's your title.
Yep.
Okay. So my first question is, like, what was your inspiration? Like, how did that all start? How did you get going with this?
I'd say I give you a long answer, but I'll try to give you the short answer. Like, for one, like I've been working in the service that we provide for 28 years now. And always it's like, how do we make the service better? How do we make it better? And how do we share what we do as best as we can with our customers? And what's interesting is you get different feedback. We have surveys that are set up, so we get feedback after every major season. So snow and ice, and then the landscape. And after talking with so many of our customers over time, we've informed them about different services and whatnot, and responded to some of their feedback. And I was like, geez, no one's actually really put together. It's a small industry, but no one's put together any kind of a book on this industry in regards to almost like how to hire. And a few years back, as you know, Jay, I started buying some industrial property, and I was on the other side of it where I was hiring contractors. And frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. I was learning as I went. So I thought of putting something together for the people that are new into property management, new into real estate for the first 5-6 years, they're going to get a ton out of it. But people that are into it for 10, 15 years, I expect they'll get something too. Maybe not as much, but that's really, I got it. And then seeing a few of the people that had written books and being around a few people that had written them, I'd ask, do I, is this something I could do? And they're like, why wouldn't you do it? So.
I love that. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right. So, well, that leads me to my next question with you then. So we all face, or at least I face imposter syndrome every now and then, and, question the why me. So when you and I talked, I know you shared that you faced that too. How'd that show up for you? How'd you overcome it?
So I had this idea to do this a couple of years ago, but that was in my head as am I the right person to do it? Like, why would people read this? And everything else. A little bit was just I've been passionate about snow and ice since I was a kid growing up. I look out the window, wait for the city plow truck to come by. I love what we do. And I can genuinely say I love the people I do it. So I love working with our team. And so one thing I can selfishly control is who we work with here, and I love the group that we have. And then nothing makes me feel better than hearing from our customers and saying if we did a good job or not. and how do we do a better job each time? So, with that and the feedback I've gotten, I'm like, this makes sense to do this. What, as far as on the other side of the imposter syndrome, is I did call a few people I know that are authors. There's someone that I'm in a class with, an annual class called Birth and the Giants, and there's a gentleman in that class who wrote the book Profit First, Mike McAllowitz, which, if he hears this by any chance, I don't mean to misquote him at all, but a few things that he said to me that was like huge takeaways, because when you go into something as something on the, oh, I'm going to do this, and I went into this casually with that imposter syndrome, but casually into, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to write a book. And I asked Mike if I could have a quick call with him, and he does this as it's his passion, his business. And Mike threw a couple things at me. It felt like I was drinking out of a fire hose. He said, Jon, a couple quick facts. Do you know that most books that are given to somebody aren't read because the perceived value is way down? And I thought about all the books on my shelf that have been given to me, and I felt guilty that he was right. 80% of people don't get past chapter 4. I didn't know that. Hardcover gives a book a more perceived value. So he was giving me all these facts that I was like, of course he knows all this. This is his business. This is his passion. I didn't know any of this. And what was funny is he was smart. At the end of the conversation, he goes, "So Jon, what did you hear?" And I said, "Well, Mike, I just realized that I have like 6 or 7 of your books. I've read several of them, but anything in the future, I only have to read the first 4 chapters." Because the one tidbit there was, he goes, "Jon, what you really should, you want to put a lot of your really great content at the front end of the book and then back it up in the back end of the book." So this is interesting facts.
Did he have any data or science to back up the why? Is it people lose interest, or they feel like they've just got enough of the idea?
He did have some information on that, and I asked a little bit of it, but he and I only had like a 30-45 minute conversation, so we didn't get deep into that. And I was asking a lot at the time. Like I did share that I used someone to help produce a book, where Mike is a true author, right? And I joke with that, but it's true. It's real. This is his passion. It's his business. He's a real author, and he spends, he literally creates from front cover to back the whole book. I mean, he's creating an amazing piece of quality. So I was trying to create a good piece of quality, but it's a side thing. This isn't my real business.
Sure. I also love how you share like his quote of, most books that are given are not read. That's a staggering comment. I'm thinking to myself, what's on the shelf that was given that I didn't read? And the whole perceived value, and then that's kind of a universal thing, I think. So interesting. Can we talk about the content in the book a little bit in terms of how did you source it? Can you share with the audience? Let's talk through the process of like why it's such a valuable book because of where it came from.
There's a process out there. I think you may be familiar with this, Jay. It's called Net Promoter Score, NPS. And for those of people on the show that don't know what that is, really all it is 2 questions you would ask a customer for anything you do, right? So the first question is, from 0 to 10, 0 being bad, 10 being great, how likely would you refer us to appear in your space, in your industry? And then the follow-up question, all it is, they give you 0 to whatever it is. And then the follow-up question is just, why did you rate us the way you did? And that's where I always get the nuggets. And I like to perform most of these I like to perform a lot of these surveys. So at one point I performed them all, and now we've delegated a little bit of that off, but it's always someone in-house here. Anyways, the comments back are what we did. We took from our customers, what is it that we were doing right? What were we doing wrong? How could we improve? And that's really over the last 28, I think it's about 17 years we've been doing the survey, where our processes came from and where the information in the book came from. So, I really owe it to the customer for the content of the book. A lot of it was either stories from our operation or their responses.
I love the source because it's actually coming from the people who are benefiting from the service itself. So it's not something we're speculating. It's not something that we're theorizing. It's something that came right from your clients.
Yeah, and I will say it's tough, whether you do testimonials or do, something specific from a client. Most of our customers are large corporate entities. So the actual facility person or the manager, it's tough to get a direct quote from them because you have to go through legal. And so you won't see that in the book. You will see sometimes it'll say, this came from somebody who is a higher up in one of the largest retail,
Hmm.
whatever. But that's how we had to put it in there.
So, what advice would you give to others? And we're going to get into the book deeper here, but what advice would you give to others on the? I'm going to stay on the front side of the process first. Like, you got over the imposter syndrome, you talked to an actual author, you had the data from your clients. I mean, maybe that's the advice in and of itself, but what would you share around that, Jon?
I would say just do it. But to be clear, I still haven't gotten over the imposter syndrome. That's something I battle with regularly. But I think if you think you've got good value to add or a resource value, and particularly if that resource isn't out there, like, make the first move forward. There's ways you can do this fairly inexpensively, and there's ways where it can get very expensive. What I found the first step was, and I've actually started book 2 and 3, Jay, and they might come out 5, 10 years from now, but they're on different topics. But basically what I create is something to spitball on. So for me, it's a simple Word doc, where you're almost like laying out chapters. And that's what I did with this book, is like, what do I think would add the most value for someone reading this that's in that field, right? And that's how I laid the chapters out.
I love it. And I want to share with the audience something you asked me earlier today. Jay, do you have ADHD? Yeah, Jon. Yep. Yeah, I do. This book's perfect for you. And then Jon was kind enough to show me exactly, because my copy hasn't arrived yet, how everything is summarized in short little bits, if that's what my brain can handle at the moment. So, well done, well done.
And as you know, I'm similar. I've got a bit of that myself. So, trying to put that into you really highlight the content for people. I think if you can, you read the whole thing. It's a short read, and I think it reads fairly well. I've unfortunately, and I'll say that jokingly, but I've read it probably 7 or 8 times because I want to make sure the tone was right and I was representing everyone right in the book.
Yeah, I want to touch on tone for a minute, because you mentioned you had a ghostwriter. What could you say about that and tone and yeah.
Yeah. So I was in this group called Strategic Coach, and Dan Sullivan, who's runs that program, amazing program. But Dan will write a book every quarter, I think it is, to this day. He's been doing that for years, and he had shared, how he does it, and some of that. I actually think he wrote a book on how he writes books, which is pretty interesting. That I took that method. I said, geez, he's doing an awesome job with this. So I went out, found the ghostwriter, and we went down that path. The challenge I had with it is the ghostwriter, no fault of their own, no fault of theirs. When they wrote the book, I thought it read in a way that sounded a little bit like I was pounding my chest, and I did not want to come off that way at all. So we eliminated a lot of the information in there about JC Grounds and the company related, and took a lot of that tone out of the book. It's just, I didn't like it. I didn't want to be represented that way. So if you go on a route where you're using another source to help with a book, realize that there probably is going to be some tonality there that you have to deal with.
Love it. Great advice. And Jon, as you know, most of our audience, thankfully, is either facility professionals or property professionals, whether that be an engineer, a manager, a CEO. I know we're not going to give away the book secrets or the content, but what highlights would you want to share? Like, were there any recurring themes or things that came from your customers that you could share with us today?
Yeah, I'll say, like, one thing that's kind of funny. It's funny, but it's not. Is that we'll hear a lot of times from facility managers and staff in property managers. They'll say, one of the things that comes up is, let's say we get a blizzard, right? Because, as you know, our core business is snow removal. If you get a blizzard and it hits the facility and everything goes off perfect, then what happens is their boss is like, our snow removal contractor did an amazing job, right? Now, if one little thing goes wrong, right, the first thing they say is, Jay, your snow removal contractor was terrible. So, that's something what we're doing is we're highlighting the key things that keep those men and women up at night. What are the things that make them the most concerned? Snow removal is one of those things that if you've got a good contractor, a lot of times people keep that person for a long time because it's painful to change. and the unknown if they're not going to follow through well, right? And the difference between a landscaper and a snow removal contractor essentially is a emergency service, right? If I don't cut the grass right at the property, no one's going to really care or know. They're going to care, but it's not a big deal. We can come back the next day. When it snows out, every single site that we manage we have to come through at a high level of service, or we're going to hear about it either that day or the next day. And I've shared this with you, Jay, before, I think the other day when we were offline. I still remember to the day we take care of a large facility that had large multiple facilities for a medical source in Massachusetts, and one of the key people there had said to me once, he said, Jon, I want you to take care of our facility here. Like if your father, son, daughter, wife, grandfather is the one in the ambulance coming up the hill, how fast do you want them to be able to get into our emergency door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget that. He said it to me, and now that's weighs heavy on me every event. And there's systems and processes that we put into place due to conversations like that. And that's what's in the book, right? So there's a lot of that information in there of like, what is it that needs to happen? Because otherwise, if you didn't know any of this stuff, if you didn't feel some of that emotion, then really it just goes down to like, how do we protect the budget as best we can, which is important also.
I love that. I'm going to jump back to distinction first of it's an emergency service. Like I'm not directly in your business. Obviously, we're in a totally different business. However, I never thought about it that way. Like when you talk about the grass not being cut perfectly, you can go back the next day, but it's so different with a storm. And I never really viewed it like that. The other point you made in that story about the unknown, like you touched on, like the unknown if that snow removal contractor doesn't perform correctly, like what's going to happen. I think
Right.
that's what I heard you say there, right? That's what the client might be concerned about. That's what keeps them up at night, right?
Yep. That's it. Yeah.
Um,
And I think, I mean, I worry about those guys. Like I know we're all in, in some form of service, right? And that's the last thing I want to be is we don't want to be a problem on their radar,
no, we want to make it easy for them.
Yeah.
Yep. So I applaud you for always jumping outside your comfort zone and getting the book written, getting it out there, Jon. Kudos to you. It's phenomenal. I'm sure your customers appreciate it, and I'm sure they enjoyed sharing the information with you. And also impressive that did you say 17 years you've been doing the Net Promoter Score?
It's been right about that. Yeah.
Any other things around the Net Promoter Score that you'd want to say, whether it's maybe a benefit to the client? Like, how does that help them?
I think this is a benefit to the client. I would hope so. Cause like, because your client, like, at least in my impression is, like we're not perfect. No one is. Like we all have challenges. It's what do you do with that challenge, right? A friend of mine, or a peer of mine, recently passed away, and one of the things that he was quoted for, well, he had shared a quote on was, "Good things come to people that see the good in all things." So good things come to people that see the good in all things. And if you think about that, right, we can get upset about something and aggravated and everything else. But if we don't take that energy and turn it into something good, then it's a waste. Then we're just angry, right? We're just upset. So another friend of mine said to me once, he goes, I don't mind conflict. I jump into it. I actually like it. And geez, that's interesting. I've never thought of it that way. I'm not afraid of it. And I definitely jump right into it. I don't know if I like it, but I love what I get out of it. So if I go into a Net Promoter Score and somebody says I rate you a 4, technically anything under a 7, as you know, is not good, right? So 7 or below is bad. 9 and 10 rather is really good. So so you want to know, like, what are those responses? Well, we've had 4s. I mean, anybody that says they never got a bad mark is going to be full of it. So taking the 4s and turning them into a 9 or a 10 is what I love. I mean, and then making sure you never get a 4 again in whatever they complained about. So I'd say like the Net Promoter Score is incredibly powerful.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Colludus, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Coludis is there to make hard work easy. Visit coludis.com today to get started.
One thing I've joked about is, Jay, have you ever been to a steakhouse? Sure, yeah, right?
Sure.
Do you, just play along with me here for a second? Like, is there anything that jumps out to you at a steakhouse, like as far as customer service standpoint, like what the waiter does and what the manager does or anything like that?
I guess their attention to our satisfaction with the meal would
Yeah.
be the one thing that would be important.
So I always joke about the reason I love doing the Net Promoter Score is because I feel like the manager at the steakhouse. And what I mean by that is usually the waiter comes around, does his thing, he does an awesome job. But a lot of times at the great steakhouses, the manager will come by and say, Mr. Culbert, did you have a great night tonight? And you're feel good just that he knew your name and he came by, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if I can call in the NPS and get some good feedback or bad feedback, but come up with a resolution and then empower the team here to make it happen and give them, they deserve it. They get the credit once it's followed through. That to me is amazing, right? And again, that's where a lot of this content came from, was like, how do we make this system so that we're doing an awesome job? And how do we share some of that with the world? Basically, that's why we come up with the book. It's not perfect. It's not awesome. It's not 100% awesome now, but we keep getting closer.
It's not about perfection. We both know that. It's progress. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good for you. I want to I want to jump back to your comment. You were the kid waiting for the snowplow to come down the street, right? Talk about passion for your business. You are in the right role, my friend. You're in the right role. And now you're a steakhouse manager too. Joking aside though, it's like a 360 feedback loop. Really is what you're creating here. And I think, if I were to speculate what the benefit to the client is without asking them would be, they're allowed to give that feedback and therefore service improves based upon the feedback or stays at a high level. You've always been someone to go take charge, and you're a very inclusive leader, Jon. I've been fortunate enough to know you and watch you lead throughout the years. And you mentioned you're delegating some of the NPS to other people. Can you tell us a little bit about your management style and how you approach your team and how that works?
This is part of the devil on both shoulders, right? Because one side of it is like, I do love what I do. That's OBS, and I want to be involved, right? But the flip side is I also have the great business minds, mentors, teachers, consultants that are like, your business should basically run on your own, right? Run on its own. See, I even said your own. Get that? Catch that? So,
I did.
and it shouldn't need you. So I'm consistently trying to work in that direction of like, how do we have all the processes in place and things in place so that our team can run the business as it should, and how and those people on the team like learn the lessons they need to learn and learn and grow. And I try not to come in and meddle, especially with something that the team has done a great job with, and frankly they're doing a lot better than I would be doing if I had it on my own. So that's like the devil on both shoulders, because the other side is as an operator, anyone that's in operations or loves operations, like your natural instinct is jump in. So it's like, how do you hold yourself back? But if we jump in, one, we're probably not going to do it as good as them, but two, they're not going to learn in there, as they go. So that's one thing we're trying to do. Yeah. And then just as the business you're in, I'm fortunate enough to know yourself and Jim and seen that business grow. And I think it's a similar culture that it definitely is something that I love to see our people become, I don't know, bigger people. I don't want to say better because they're already great people, just better at what they do,
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. No, thanks for expanding on that. I'm fortunate enough to talk to a lot of facility and property people on a regular basis, and like these professionals, these growth-minded people. And a topic that comes up a lot in our discussions and on this show, quite frankly, is networking and getting networks and being in strong networks and learning. And I think it ties in with growth. It definitely ties in with growth. But I bring this up because I think the audience will benefit hearing from you about your growth journey too. I mean, you're part of EO. I'm looking at SEMA on your windowsill there. Like, you're part of a lot of organizations, Jon, and I think it's helped you grow, right? But I'd love to hear your experience with the different organizations and what you want to share around that.
Yeah, because of the way I grew up, sometime in my teen years, I latched onto a few different mentors early. And the owner of Coludis is one of them. Jim is a close friend now, but I had these different mentors that I was fortunate enough to learn from, and then also exposed me to some of these different organizations. And what I found was interesting is, I don't know, we're the people on the show that probably all a lot of them probably did a lot better than I did in school. I was like a C, D, F student in high school and grammar school, and I really didn't think I was a good learner. But what I found later in life is like what I loved, what I was passionate about. When I had a good teacher and I was passionate about it, I became a really strong learner and I loved it. So I started jumping into like peer groups, stuff that I had common interests, and also you go, where's the equipment? And what I would find is like SIMA for one was interesting, where I'd go out there. They had a conference once a year. It was all snow related, snow and ice removal related. And every year I'd find one thing, at least either on the showroom floor or in one of the talks, that I know I could trace back and go, that was worth the whole trip and probably times 10. So that's where a lot of these things that you just think they may not help you right then, but they're going to help down the line.
Thanks for sharing that. And I do agree. I was part of Strategic Coach for a while too. And Dan Sullivan, what an amazing, accomplished individual, and what a great process to learn from. So fantastic. So you touched on it. So I'd like to ask you, your personal journey. I've been fortunate enough to know, a lot about you, Jon, and I think it would be great for you to share more about that and how it's helped you grow and become who you are today.
Yeah, I don't have a coach to lay on here, Jay. So the psychology side of it is tough. But Jay does know, for the audience out there, he knows a bit about my story. I didn't really share a lot of this for a while, and I'm definitely more open and comfortable sharing it now. I'm not somebody that does well taking praise or anything like that. And this is a little bit of a tougher story to share, but I will tell you, early on, I was like many people, I came from a split house. So my father was out of the house early, before I could remember. My mother was a local Peabody, Mass school teacher, and she had a tough go of it early on. She had polio. She literally, the vaccine came out right after like very soon after she was diagnosed. So that created some handicap issues there. When we were growing up, she'd gotten cancer. She beat it once, came back, and then when I was 16, my brother and I lost our mother. So she passed of what's called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Long story short, we were left with, she didn't have anything saved. She had some credit cards, and the deal was, with a public school teacher, at least back then, you would get 1 year's of what was supposed to be your pension. And my mother had taught, I think, in the system for well over 25 years. She contributed all along. As the years, we received that 1 year salary. It was under $45,000 at the time. And what she also did, which I feel a little weird sharing, but my mother never owed anyone a cent in her life. I believe she took out a couple of credit cards, pulled some cash out of them, because she knew that we weren't going to get anything else. And she knew no one was going to be responsible at that point. So sorry, MasterCard and Visa, because we probably got another 10,000 there. Anyways, my brother and I had a mortgage to pay. We had bills, and we didn't really want to go anywhere. We wanted to stay in our house. My brother was 19. I was 16. I had just started the company, JC Grounds. At the time, it was JC Landscaping. I was still in high school. My brother was just out of high school into college. My mother made us promise to her that we would both finish college. So we continued on. I got a degree in political science and criminal justice. My brother did as well, both out of Salem State University, or Salem University now, whatever it is. I continued with the business. My brother came to me. I'm giving you as quick as I can on this. My brother had come to me one day. I was loading my landscape trailer up and all the equipment in the driveway, because I was literally working out of my house with a converted snowmobile trailer and a Chevy Blazer. And he came up and he goes, "Hey, look, I got to tell you, we got about X amount of dollars in the bank. I think it was like $50,000 at the time." He's like, "I did the math. we're not going to have, I don't remember what it was, 12 months or whatever, 6 months we had left. He goes, we're going to burn through this cash with the mortgage and with our bills and everything else. It's about what we have left. And he said, do you care? I've been playing around with day trading. Do you remember, Jay, when day trading first came out? Like it was a big,
Sure.
so I don't know, it was E-Trade or whatever,
Yeah.
And he goes, do you care? And this is a 19-year-old kid, right? And he goes, do you care if I try it? Because I've been doing it on this app where it's like free. You don't use any money, and I'm pretty good at it. And I remember this day, I can't use the language I used with him, but I said, I don't give a F. We're screwed either way. And that was it. And he and I were like kind of watered out, we're battling a little bit here and there, as normal teenagers would. So I left and went about my way. And I was using a little bit of the funds from the company to pay for some of our utility bills, which he as kind of the leader in the house, he asked for, right? So anyhow, we didn't talk too much. We're both going to school, doing our thing. Kind of, didn't have like a real tight relationship by any means. And whether it was like 3 months later or whatever, he comes back. We're in the driveway again. Okay. He goes, I get good news and bad news. And this might not be exactly how it happened, but this is how it's playing back in my head. And I said, okay, well, what's the bad news? He goes, I lost some money. All right. He goes, I lost like $5,000. He goes, I'm not going to trade anymore. And I go, okay, what's the good news? He goes, well, I tripled our cash.
Beautiful.
Right. And I remember, something to the effect that he had calculated the boat where that would put us. We'll have enough money for like the next 3 years or whatever. You got to keep doing your thing. And I do. And neither of us really, I didn't like ask for money or anything I just said that we both had to figure it out. And I remember, again, I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble, especially now that I'm a so-called author, right? My brother and I couldn't afford books to school, so we would borrow books from friends in our classes, and we'd take them and Xerox them, copy them, because we couldn't afford to buy the books, right? So we had to do whatever we had to do, and again, I'm probably in trouble for even sharing that, but it is what it is.
You didn't say which books. Jon, thank you so much for, sharing so much about your personal journey. It's so inspiring. At least it's very inspiring for me. You think you have something tough or there's a challenge in front of you, and like look what you guys did, right? Look at this thriving business you now own and lead. It's very impressive. You're an outdoor enthusiast. I can't think of how many times I've seen a picture of you on top of a mountain with your dog. Right? I
Right.
mean, it seems like you're outside all the time when you're not working, right? You're outside when you're working too. But
Right.
like, what are some of the things?
What happened there is, it's kind of story of my life. When I got out of the field, because I wasn't working as much outside and I was more behind a desk. I don't know anyone on this, show can relate, in the audience can relate to this, but I got out of the field when I was working my butt off outside, and now all of a sudden I'm behind a desk and I put on a ton of weight. So I went up to 285 pounds at one point, and I was going up. I had bought a 2-family house. It's going up to the third floor, and I was like huffing and puffing. I was only in my 20s. I'm like, this isn't good. So I took action, found a way to drop the weight through diet and everything else, through better nutrition, and then I had heard this exercise guru say, "All right, you've done the process," which I did like the same process like 3 times. And he goes, now you need to find a way to work it into your regular lifestyle to be healthier. So I remembered I liked to hike way back when. So I started hiking again. And then I found so many other benefits of just being outside, like you say, clearing the air and having some goals.
Good for you, man. Again, inspiring, impressive. For the benefit of the audience too, what are there any nuggets, like a couple of best practices or nuggets that you'd want to share that really came through in the book or outside of the book, either way, from your customers? Like, what should a property manager, a facility manager, or leader look for in a snow removal company, or what should they look out for?
Yeah, I think one thing that's just not, it's one of the things that I'll should try to share some that like might not be obvious, right? So one thing is insurances. And what I mean by that is property insurance from your vendor. Because what has happened is, this is a tough business. There's a lot of lawsuits going on every year now, especially in Massachusetts, but it's happening in states across the country. And what's the effect of that has been a lot of insurance carriers don't want to carry snow contractors, particularly ones that are doing it like on the side, right? So like if this is like a side hustle, you don't have a lot of process and everything else. They just don't want to carry you because a lot of the contracts that are out there from the buyer side limit liability for the buyer. So even though it limits liability, remember, not all contractors are the same. Like if they don't have the right insurance, they, you know, they're gonna whoever that is that got hurt is going to try to come after someone. So they're going to go after the contractor. They're going to be named in the property is going to be named in the lawsuit as well. So making sure that your contractor is well insured, but also that you've got basically all the right pieces of the policy in place, and that all those pieces are in the book, and you can find that in there. So I'd look at that. I'd also just look to see what's the history of the vendor. So obviously common sense, like, yeah, sure, you want to call a few of the people and ask about the vendor. Are they operating in towns close by you? Are they operating for the similar types of properties, similar type of scale? What's their history? And then what's their processes like for backups? Because that's the other thing that we see is just there's in this business, because it is emergency service, I can't call like a repair company and say, hey, my loader, like my 3-yard loader broke down in the middle of the night. Can you come out and fix it? They're going to laugh, or they're not going to pick the phone up. So what kind of backup systems do they have in place? So a lot of things like that. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces that are in there, and most of it, like I said, did come either firsthand from something that we had done or something we had heard from our customer. Most of them we
Outstanding.
learned the hard way.
Right? Those are the best lessons, right? No, don't want to repeat them again. I have a different question for you, Jon. In terms of geography or reach, since you've said emergency a few times here, right? Should an FM or PM be aware or asking questions of, what's their actual capability within a snow event?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, from a reach standpoint, what we've done over the years is we've seen a lot of people in the market in our world have gone more into like subcontracting services or almost reduce their own infrastructure, and we're trying to build ours out. So what we say is, let me get away from JC for a second. If you'd like your contractor to either be within 15 to 30 minutes is really on the outside of the reach, either their corporate facility or a branch, right? So they've got good infrastructure within 30 minutes. If it's much more than that, in my opinion, it's getting a little dicey.
Good stuff. Great information. Great info. And we're not going to give any more of the book away. We have to go buy that book to get the real data here. Jon, Snow Removal Solutions for Property Managers. That's the name of your book. Can you tell people where they can find it? How could they get a copy?
Yeah, so you can get it on Amazon, and I do want people to buy this book. We prefer not to give it away. All proceeds from the book go towards cancer research. We want the proceeds of the book to go there. And part of that is that psychology of like, we want you to read the book. So we want you to pay for the book and just know that your money isn't going to line anyone's pockets. It's going directly towards cancer research.
Jon Crandall, brand new author, brand new book. If you're an FM or a PM, I would highly recommend getting yourself a copy. Jon, how could people personally get in touch with you if they have more questions for you, your journey? You've shared a lot of personal and professional today.
I'm best reached here. You can email jon@jcgrounds.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can go to our website, jcgrounds.com. The book is on the website as well, and the link to it. There's also like a little thing. If you fill it out, you'll get some of the 10-point summaries on the book. But reality is, if you call into our office, you ask for me, I'm here almost every day during the week, and I love talking about this stuff. I don't care if you ever do business with us. If you have a question about snow, have a question about writing a book, anything like that, like I will say 100%, like the people I respect more than anyone in the world are all of us in service. Like every day I talk with my kids and work with my kids. It's about respecting people in service. Like I love what you guys do, and I would have no qualm about talking to anybody. So please give us a call.
Jon, you're a friend. I've looked up to you. I've learned from you for years, and I can't thank you enough for, again, taking the time, being on the show with us and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your journey. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate that too, Jay. And like anytime I'm not feeling good, I'm going to call you.
Sounds good, man. I hope I can lift you up.
You're
We lift
awesome.
each other up.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Awesome. And thank you to the audience, everyone listening. If you learned something, if you laughed, tell somebody else about the show. Jon, thanks again. And hey, another great episode of Facility Rockstars. We'll see everybody next time.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.